Well, hello and welcome. Welcome to Narrate Your Story TV. This is the show that we do every Monday at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And you know what? I do this show just for you. My name is Dr. Christy Wuchuku, and I am the host of Narrate Your Story TV, where we bring you experts to talk about things that will help you up-level your life as well as your business. And we have been doing this show for a couple of months now. And I'm telling you, the show that we did last week, The Business of Love. This is part 2 of that show. And I have our guest back. We're going to be talking about The Business of Love, part 2, when the stars align. So, let me tell you a little bit of our guest today. Our guest is Vaun Jackson. Vaun is a native of Chicago, Illinois, and is known as the Love Alchemist. He's a master relationship strategist, author, transformational speaker, and personal development coach. He helps married and unmarried couples find their own unique path towards harmony and also helps singles discover their unique, simplest versus most challenging compatibility matches for themselves. His love alchemy and alignment sessions have guided couples and singles all over the world towards lasting, loving relationship. Please help me welcome our guest, Vaun Jackson. Vaun, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Christy. It's always good to spend time with you. I appreciate you.
Awesome. So we had a show last week, and because of that show, we are having a follow-up on that show because we couldn't fit everything in 1 hour. And so today, I want to dive into, or should I say, before I dive into today's, tell us a little bit about who you are, because there are people that are just seeing you for the very first time. Can you tell us about how you came to be the Love Alchemist?
How I came to be the Love Alchemist. Well, my wife gave me that nickname a few years ago. And it's because I've been in this relationship space now where I'm helping couples transition and improve their relationship. And so there's this book called The Love Alchemist. Not The Love Alchemist. The book was called The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. He's a brother from Brazil, I think. And the book is called The Alchemist. And basically, alchemy is this state of taking a base metal like lead and transmuting it or transforming it to gold. And so lead is thought to be, basically of very little value. And of course, gold has a very high value. And so she came up with this idea that it seems like I'm helping couples transform their relationship from lead to gold.
Oh, wow.
And so she began saying, the Love Alchemist, that's what you are. That's what you remind me of. And so it just kind of stuck. And but a little bit about me. I met my wife when I was 12 years old on the playground. Classic love story. And we began dating shortly after. And we got married immediately after graduating high school. And so this year makes 31 years married and 33 years total. And in that time frame, we've produced 4 children and 5 grandchildren. And I've been coaching and counseling couples now, as well as individuals, singles, and even mental performance and even some therapeutic kind of work with people. I've been doing that now for the better part of about 15 years. And it's been good. I really enjoy doing it. And even more important than enjoying doing it, I really love seeing the results and the impact that it has on people's lives. So that's it in a nutshell.
Wow. So we're going to dive into this conversation today. And the conversation today, we're talking about when the stars align. When the stars align. In terms of relationship, what exactly do you mean when the stars align?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting because when I met my wife, when we first started dating, I had no clue about any of this stuff. And again, she was the one that introduced me to this kind of information. And people talk about zodiac signs and things like that. and astrology and the horoscopes. And all I knew was that I was an Aries. You know, and then you go to the bubblegum machine. It's funny. You know, you go to the bubblegum machine and you put your quarter in and you get the little scroll out and it tells you, you know, you're going to have a lucky day and all that stuff. But it goes a lot deeper than that. And so she began introducing me to some of the different and deeper writings dealing with this subject. And so this idea of when the stars align, it really speaks to compatibility in a relationship as much as anything. So that goes from your intimate relationship between a boyfriend and girlfriend or husband and wife, but it also translates to parental relationships, parents and children, and any other relationships that you have. But equally important, it translates to business.
Oh.
And so there are people that you are going to naturally, innately have a much more difficult time communicating with. They don't receive you. It's hard for you to receive them. Even though you might really like that person, they may be very well qualified to do the job. The communication is just much more challenging. And that's an example of when the stars misalign. And sometimes, and this can happen in all manners of relationships. Sometimes we give birth to children where the stars misalign. They don't understand us. We don't understand them. And then you find yourself saying, boy, that boy won't do anything that I tell him to do. And that's because oftentimes we're missing each other. And so this idea of aligning the stars, where what I do is an alignment session, the stars may be innately out of line or innately out of whack. But what I help to do is to bring those stars within alignment so that we can enhance the communication and ultimately enhance the relationship.
When you help me understand here, because there may be viewers that are probably asking the same question. When you say the stars aligns, what is the star? What are we talking about? What is the star?
So here's a very basic idea about it. And let's just deal with the astrology part of it for a second, the zodiac part of it. My wife is a Pisces. I'm an Aries. Okay. And so there are some things about her that are innately much more challenging for me to deal with. So by nature, I'm a lot more impulsive, and I tend to be more, maybe even aggressive, if you want to call it that, or maybe even a little bit argumentative. I see you fighting that laugh. You know too much about me already.
All right, let's stop fighting it and just go ahead and laugh, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And so for somebody like my wife, who's a lot more passive aggressive, and maybe even passive aggressive isn't the word, as much as she's much more easygoing, has a much lower tendency to argue, and also she's very sensitive. And so with me being as impulsive as I am, and sometimes maybe even a little bit overbearing, it's what I used to be. I'm not that way anymore, but I had to master. This is what self-mastery is about, right? Yeah. Learning those things about yourself that aren't necessarily the most marketable attributes, and then working on those things, fine-tuning those things so that you can present the world a better version of yourself. And this is also what I mean by alignment, right? So my wife is very attractive. We were both very attracted to each other, but there were some things about our communication that it was very hard for us to align. And I had to learn how to interact with her in a healthier way so that we could both get the outcomes that we were looking for. And again, I say that translates to parent and child relationships. It also translates to business relationships and just about any relationship you can think of. So I'm sorry, I guess I didn't go as far into that.
Go ahead.
With her being a Pisces and her being naturally much more sensitive, and anybody who's a Pisces or even a water sign, because Pisces falls under the umbrella of the water signs. So that's the Pisces, that's the Cancer, like yourself, and the Scorpio. So these are your water signs, and they tend to be a little bit more on the sensitive side or the emotional side of things. Doesn't mean that it's going to be a watershed moment or that they're going to break out into tears every time something goes wrong, but it just means that they tend to be a little bit more sensitive than non-water signs. Okay. And so I didn't realize that at first. And in my interaction with her, I had a tendency to be less careful than what the relationship dynamic was actually asking of me. Okay. And it's the same thing with your children. Again, some children can be encouraged very differently than others. One child, you can say, "Oh, I know you can do a lot better than that. You really messed that up." And that child might say, "Okay, Dad, got it. I understand. I'm going to go and I'm going to fix it. I'm going to do my best. I'm going to do better next time." But you say that very same thing to another child, let's say a water sign child like a Pisces, and they may go into a shell where you've caused more harm than good. You see? And so understanding who we're innately relating to can make all the difference in the world. Does that answer the question?
Yes, yes. As you are talking, it really reminds me of whether we are talking about communication style, we're talking about personality, tendencies. So the same principle applies, because if you are speaking to somebody who is a direct communicator, if you are a direct communicator and you're communicating with somebody who's an analyst, right? The person likes facts and so on and so forth. The communication has to be different so that the other person can receive it. Oftentimes there's a challenge, and this is one of the things that I teach in Narrate Your Story in my company. And oftentimes, if they don't understand that they're different personality, there has to be different communication style, there's a struggle, that relationship, that they don't relate very well. And one may be saying, well, this person is not a good person and this person is not a good person. That's not really the case. It's just that they have not understood the way to relate with not one another based on their personalities and their communication style. Is it kind of the same thing you're talking about?
Very similar. And I always say, seek first to understand and second to be understood. And so there was a time where, if you meet a young lady out and about, maybe it's at the club or maybe it's wherever at the coffee shop, whatever. And we would approach her and we would say, "Hey girl, what's your sign?" Right. I don't know if you remember those days, but
wow.
There was this thing where we used to say, "What's your sign?" And it ended up being just a pickup line, right? Just an easy way into the conversation. But that's not what it was meant to be. It was meant to be an introduction of who you were dealing with, who you were relating to.
Oh, wow.
And so if from the onset, I understand that you're a water sign, for instance, I'm going to probably interact with you a little bit different than I might interact with someone who's an earth sign, who has a tendency to be a little bit more direct. Now, again, there's always going to be some variances even in that, but that's an easy, soft introduction to the person that you're dealing with. And so had I known then some of the things that I know now, for instance, my wife, who's also my business partner, I would have interacted with her very, very differently than I do now, ultimately. And even in my child rearing process, I would have interacted with my children very differently had I known. There's not a one size fits all when you're dealing with people. So to your point, there is a thing about communication styles, but there are people who, despite their communication style, there is a way that they receive information that's more palatable and ultimately more conducive to the outcomes that you're looking for.
Yeah. I'm thinking as you're talking that I think oftentimes we shy away from people that have different communication style or personality traits, right? Than who we are. But how does that help? How does knowing this help in your work with men and women?
That's a very good question. And I think in this line of work, in relationships, part of the challenge, a major part of the challenge, is that you have a lot of couples out here that they're trying to learn each other or relearn each other, trying to rekindle that spark, that flame. But ultimately, you find so many people, or I find so many people, that are doing their level best to love someone that they don't even like. And so a large part of understanding this dynamic that I'm talking about is when you understand the nature of a person and then you deal with them accordingly, it's much easier to be likable, and for them to for you to be likable and for them to be likable, because you understand them very differently than you did, prior to this information. And so even though we know that love, that there's so much duty that takes place in any type of arrangement, business relationships or even intimate relationships, there's a sense of duty and obligation that we're all trying to fulfill. But it helps tremendously when you actually like the person that you're dealing with. That makes it's a game changer. And so as far as intimate relationships go, I mean, man, who wants to be living in a home with somebody that you love, but you really don't like being around them a whole lot? And that's way too common.
And we're talking about both business and intimate relationship, but let's take it to business, because I know that in coaching clients that I've come across clients where I have to change in a way of communicating with those individuals, because I understand very well that their communication style is totally different. Their personality, threats, so different than who I am. And so for me, in order to be able to give the transformation, have that person receive the transformation, work with that person, I actually have to adjust. And if I don't adjust, my experience is that relationship will not work. It's always like a tug of war, right?
Yeah.
It's always like a tug of war. And so speak on, what are the challenges that you as a coach have experiences when people come to you? Are you saying that if you have someone that is different than you, that you may not be able to get in a relationship with that person, whether we're talking about business relationship or intimate relationship? Or are you saying, yes, you can, even it has to do with marriage? Yes, you can be with this person. However, from the onset, you need to know this and you need to work on this, because there are times, until I met you, I don't really know a whole lot about what you are talking about. I know about communication style and personality, but when it comes to the signs and the stars, I didn't know about it. Can you touch on that?
Yeah, I think first of all, there's no such thing as a relationship that can't work. Most people they just don't show up with the right tools to make the relationship work. And so, yeah, and so two of my best friends, they are polar opposites as far as the astrology goes, but they've been married for a couple years longer than my wife and I.
Wow.
So, and those two signs, there's a Pisces and a Virgo. I think I mentioned this on the previous show. Pisces and Virgo are each other's polarity. My brother and his wife are polarity. He's Leo and she's Aquarius. They're each other's polarity. And so when you understand that relating dynamic, then you tend to give each other room and tend to give each other more grace for what you perceive as imperfections in their character and in their personality. So understanding, again, seek first to understand, second to be understood. When you understand, when you operate according to understanding, it makes all the difference in the world. And this is a large part, I think, of why we see so many relationships where you have two really good people. And for whatever reason, and I put whatever reason in quotes, for whatever reason, they couldn't work it out, whether it be a business partnership or an intimate partnership. And when you uncover some of the details about why they fell out, it's ultimately because the relating dynamic, for whatever reason, they couldn't get on the same page. And yeah, that's information based.
And what you're doing is really awesome. It's something that will help a lot of people in our community.
Thank you.
The whole world. It's huge. I have to say it's huge. Understanding the other person. We take it very lightly, but it's not lightly. It really is not lightly. So what are the, how do I say it? What are the problems that you see for people that are coming to you? What are the major problems that you see for people that are coming to you for help?
Yeah. So a large part, listen, it's interesting because there's this philosophy that, or this concept that opposites attract. And there's some truth to that. You know, there's something about that polarity, that difference between those individuals where, let's say that I'm an Aries and she's my polarity as a Libra, right? So there's something unique and very attractive about somebody who you just don't quite understand. It's so hard for you to figure them out. And that breeds some sexual tension, right? There's an attractiveness about that thing that you don't quite fully understand. You can't quite put your finger on it yet. And then by the time you realize it, pow, you're in love with somebody that you don't like. Or you've got children with somebody that you don't like. Or you've created bills with somebody that you don't like. And now, you know, you're trying to work it out in this dynamic that, you know, you probably, maybe you would have avoided if you had known 6 months ago or a year ago what you now know, or maybe you would have approached the relationship very differently at the onset if you had known then what you know now. So again, when I deal with many of these couples, they come to me in these opposites attract type of dynamics where they're operating like oil and water. And you can tell that there's so much passion in between these couples. I mean, they're arguing and yelling because he loves her so much and she loves him so much. And he can't understand for the life of him why she won't understand what he means. And she can't understand for the life of her why he won't be more understanding and compassionate and more giving. And why can't you be more like the way I want you to be? And it's rooted in misunderstanding. And then also with that correct understanding, you have a much greater likelihood of giving that person the benefit of the doubt, even when you don't see things their way. And this is so often what we're dealing with. You have people who, because their stars aren't aligned, they think the other person is trying to get over on them, trying to take advantage of them, trying to manipulate them, rather than understanding that sometimes that's just their nature, their communication style, and what they're asking of you isn't something that they wouldn't offer you themselves in return. So again, this understanding, I mean, oh my God, you have to see it in action, Chrissy. I mean, it's remarkable. Sometimes I hear couples on the phone, you know, and many times my initial consultation is via phone. And I'm listening to them describe to me what they're dealing with, what they're going through, the problems that they're facing. And as I listen to them, I can hear the passion and I can hear them arguing, and I can figure out what sign they are before we even get off the phone, before they even tell me what it is.
Wow, really?
Yeah, because I've done it so much now, I can say, okay, she's a water sign for sure. Or I can say, he's a fire sign for sure. And then, of course, I don't say anything right then. Right now, we're just doing the initial consultation. But later on in the conversation, I may say, hey, you know, I just need your, you know, for the alignment purposes, what's your birthday? What month and day were you born? I don't care about the year. I don't have to know exactly how old you are. Mm-hmm. But that does add deeper clarity when I know how old you are, because now that opens up a new portal where the Chinese part of it, or the Eastern part of astrology, plays into it. And that's critically important, maybe even more important in some aspect. Now, we don't talk about that part very much, but that's a huge part of it as well. But again, oftentimes I can figure it out before they even tell me.
You know, it's so interesting because the last time that you and I were talking, and you were saying that knowing when somebody was born, that you can even go as far as saying what type of job that they will be good at. Is that correct?
Absolutely. My nephew, he's trying to figure out what he's going to do for college, and this is his senior year. And so I was talking to him, and I asked him, I said, hey man, what do you want to do? Well, Uncle, I don't know. I'm very interested in electronics, but I'm also interested in this and that. And he listed several different job fields, that he was interested in going in. And among those different job fields that he was interested in going in, a few of them aligned with some of his natural gifts, his innate talents. Wow. And so what you find is that many times people will choose a job path based on how much money they think they can make. And this is why you have some doctors and some lawyers, some professionals who are making, you know, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year, but they're miserable at what they do. I mean, they're great at what they do, but they're miserable doing it, right? They're very unhappy. Their life feels so fulfilling because they're doing something that they're not really passionate about, even though they're making a lot of money. And so when you understand what your natural or innate alignment is toward a certain career path, there are things that you are naturally more gifted at. There are certain, someone who's born in the month of July is naturally better fit to be a lawyer, right? And there are other avenues that they could go into as well, but that's just one of the ideas that you can have. And so in this aspect, you have people who produce children on purpose, with purpose. So there are some families who run a family business, who have run family business for generations, and they need a lawyer. So they say, hey, we're going to make sure that we bring a lawyer into the fold so that it stays in-house. All of the business stays in-house. We know who is more likely to be what when they grow up, and you can groom children accordingly. So it doesn't seem like you're pressuring them to be a lawyer when it's something that feels good and natural to them anyway. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. When you talk about July, what are the tendencies that will make that person be a lawyer?
Well, it depends on which one you're going to. So now in the latter part of July is Leo. So July 22nd, I believe.
22nd.
On through to August 22nd. And so Leos tend to be much more aggressive and leaders, thought leaders.
That's you.
Right. And so if you take somebody that's in that space, and they're also very passionate. These are fire signs. Leo, Aries, and Sagittarius are your fire signs. And it doesn't mean that other people aren't passionate as well, but you take these people, somebody like me who's never met an argument that I couldn't win, right? That's me.
So well.
So you take somebody who has the natural knack, or if you want to call it a gift, of being argumentative, like me, and then you put them in a field where they have all of this, they get to scratch that itch on a professional level, right? It's going to be hard to beat somebody like that because they're passionate, they love what they do, and they're good at it. That's what they call that's a triangle where they call that your zone of genius, where you're passionate about something, you're also good at it, and you love doing what you do. That's your zone of genius. And so when you have people who align with their natural tendencies, and you can put them in place to do with, a lot of businesses will actually hire based on that too. There are some CEOs and hiring and firing managers who understand that this job calls for this type of skill set and this type of mindset, and they'll hire you or not hire you based on what their needs are for that position.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
that really makes a lot of sense. And you touch on it, the fact that some of us get into a job because it brings money, it puts food on the table. In actuality, that's not really, we be at the job, we learn on the job situation. But if we are given the opportunity, or that everything you go into, every job you go into will bring as much money, I think that a lot of us will choose a different path.
Yeah.
Right? And you said it so well, but it's not until the latter part of our life that all of a sudden we begin to gravitate going towards what we really like. I heard about, and actually saw, it was a show or a program they were doing. There was a doctor, that medical doctor that was there and has practiced for some time. But do you know that the doctor said that throughout the time he was practicing, he was miserable? Now, I don't know about all the sign and so on, but what I saw, what I heard was that he was miserable throughout that time. He was making now, doctors bring home income, right? They bring good income home. But can you imagine that he was bringing the income home, yet he was miserable throughout the time? What that doctor, that medical doctor finally became was a chef. Can you imagine that?
Wow. I can. I was going to say.
Oh, goodness, a chef. But
yeah.
He said he is so happy doing what he loves. And I can imagine he loves creativity rather than where that's now that you're talking about all the stars. I can think of this man loves creativity. And even though perhaps sometimes our parents put us under that path, because some of us, we go onto that path out of our own making, because again, it brings the income home. And when I was watching this medical doctor, I was like, oh my God. People on the side may be saying, be a chef? What?
Right.
Man, are you crazy? What? At least 7 years going to school to be a medical doctor, at least 7 years, right? And now you bring in money, and that's a prestigious job, right? Career, and you living that to be just a chef. But that man is happy.
That's right.
Happy doing what he loves. Happy waking up every morning. Happy being
Can you imagine? Can you imagine giving this gift of information and knowledge to a child, 7, 8, 10 years old,
man,
and putting them on the path to what they're ultimately going to be? That eliminates the likelihood that so many of us do. We wander through high school trying to figure out, man, I don't know what I want to do. I mean, the pharmacists, they make so much money, and and everything is so much about how much money we can make on the other side. And you don't know what you don't know. And like that doctor, he gets there at this place where he studied and for 8 years to be in school, and then he practiced law or practiced medicine for several years, ultimately just to turn around and say, this ain't it.
I applaud him.
Imagine if he had known 15 years prior that about his passion for doing something like that. I mean, first of all, you would have saved him a couple $100,000 in educational bills,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
Student loans. And then you would have enriched his life and added to his happiness that much more. And ultimately, I mean, look, they talk about heart disease and cancer and all this other stuff that's killing people. Stress is the number one killer in this country. And I can't imagine anything being much more stressful than being saddled with all the student loan debt and having done all this work to become a profession that you ultimately not only don't want to be in, but you despise going to work every day. That's incredibly stressful.
Yeah, when I saw it, I was like I said, a lot of people will be saying, are you crazy? Leaving your job, a medical doctor, to become just a chef.
Yeah.
But he's making a lot of money, according to him, doing what he loves. And even if he's not making a lot of money, that is equates to the money that he made when he was a medical doctor. The man was happy, happy, smiling, laughing, that he wasn't able to do when he was a medical doctor. But
there's no price tag on peace of mind.
This work that you do is huge. It's huge, and I can imagine it will save a lot of relationship. And we're not talking about just the intimate relationship. That's huge. But even business relationship, where one doesn't understand one another, or even so not being put in a job they don't like. That's huge.
Yeah.
Because it's costing the employer a lot of, it's costing the employer a lot of money. That person is there. They are not performing their best. They are not performing their best. They're just there waiting for the paycheck to come in every month or every week or every 2 weeks, however often they pay them. This is huge.
There are some people who are very dismissive about this type of information. Mm-hmm. And I was on the phone with a couple, and this was a pro bono session because he was a friend of mine, and he and his wife were struggling. They had been married for about 15 years. She couldn't stand him, and he couldn't stand her. And that reminds me of my marriage. I mean, there was a point in my own marriage where my wife couldn't stand me. And we got on the phone, and he was telling me, I had talked to him about this 2 or 3 times before he mentioned to me that in a joking way, he said that, hey, man, you talk a real good game. Maybe one of these days I'm going to bring my wife to you and we can sit down and have a conversation. I said, yeah, man, whenever you're ready. And he said it another time or 2 after that. And then I just called him on and I said, hey, man, you keep mentioning this, but you haven't made any steps toward doing this. So I said, let's set up a session. Me, you, and your wife, we can get on the phone and let's just talk about it and see what we can do. And we get on the phone, and I'm on the phone with them for the better part of an hour. And I'm talking to them about this stuff that we're discussing now. And he's blowing it off. He's like, I hear you and it sounds good, but I'm really not buying it. I just want the relationship part of it. You can keep the astrology part of it and the stars and the aligning. You can keep that part. Just tell me what me and my wife need to do to have a better relationship. And so I said, well, just humor me for a second. I said, I'm just going to read some of this stuff to you. And if it works, then great. If it doesn't, throw it out. Nothing lost, right? I'm doing this for free. So you got nothing to lose, everything to gain. And we're on the phone. And as I'm reading to him about himself, I mean, he was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Mm-hmm. And then as I'm reading to her about herself, she's laughing she's laughing the heartiest and fullest laugh. And I stopped. I said, what's so funny? And she said, this is what she didn't know anything about this stuff that I'm talking about, mm-hmm. but she was laughing because these are things that she had been trying to tell him. And wow. I was offering him a confirmation that it was astonishing because I'd never met her, never talked to her before. But as I'm reading to her about herself and informing him about these same things, he was speechless because he knew that I didn't know his wife. So how could I know all of these different things that would help him relate to his wife that much better? And so by the end of the phone call, he said, man, we were actually contemplating divorce. He said, but we're actually sitting here holding hands now. Wow. And it was a good feeling for me because, again, this is a labor of love for me anyway. But it's just another testament to the fact that right information corrects incorrect problems. So there's so much to gain when you have understanding.
So I want to say hello. Thank you for watching. For our viewers, don't forget to drop any comments in the comment section, and we will respond to your comments. And I appreciate you for stopping by and watching. I hope that I know that you're gonna get values, lots of nuggets in this conversation today. Again, we do this show every Monday, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Every Monday, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And don't forget to come back and join us Monday at 9 Pacific Time. So, as we continue to dive into this conversation, there is something that before we leave today, I want you to give to my viewers. And that is, can you give us some pointers, however many you have, on whether you're getting into a relationship with a spouse, with a boyfriend, business relationship, any kind of relationship that is important for us to watch before we get into that relationship in terms of aligning the stars to make that relationship more effective?
Yeah, I would say, we take our time when we're introducing people to our family, right? But I would say when you find yourself in a relationship with somebody that you think it might materialize into something serious, that you think that the potential is there. If you see potential for the relationship, I would say get one of these alignment sessions early, because the sooner the better. Because when you begin your relationship, it's like what they say, the old folks used to say, starting out on the right foot. Right. And so with that in mind, I say the sooner you have an understanding of who you're dealing with, the better off you're going to be. So number one, I would say, in the moment that you think that the relationship has potential to be something good, I would say get an alignment session. You can email me, info@theconditionsoflove.com. You can inbox me here on Facebook at Vaun Says, or the Love Alchemist, Vaun the Love Alchemist. Get one of these alignment sessions. That's one. But I would say this is something that's very plain and it's not very deep, but I think it's very profound nonetheless. There's nothing more important than integrity and character. I don't care who you're in a relationship with. I don't care how beautiful they are, how much money they make. I don't care what their zodiac sign is. If they're low on integrity and if they're low on character, there's no fixing that. right? So number one, get the alignment. Well, scratch that. I'll say number one, make sure that you're dealing with a person that's high in integrity and high in character. Number two, discover whether or not that relationship has some sort of potential. Make sure you're on the same page. Even the Bible says, be ye not unequally yoked. Now, most of us think that that means believers with non-believers. And that's true. There's a part of that that's very true. You don't want to be with somebody who you don't even, let me say it this way. It's much more challenging to be with someone who you don't share the same faith. Okay. So being equally yoked also means, do we want the same things out of this relationship, this business partnership? If I'm thinking, for instance, that I want a wife who stays at home, cooks, raises the children, homeschool, and all of this other stuff, that if I want a domestic wife, but she has aspirations of being a Fortune 500 CEO, you can see we're not equally yoked, right? Even though she might be the best woman I could possibly come across as far as character and integrity, she might be honest and she loves me and I love her, but our ideas are so different. So that when I say wife and when she says wife, we mean two totally different things, right? So our ideals have to align. We have to be equally yoked in order for there to be the type of outcomes and for the relationship to reach its fullest potential. And this is the same thing with business. If you have a certain way that you want to do business, but I'll have a different way of wanting to do business, they can both be scrupulous, right? They can both be integrity-based ideologies behind our approach, but just very different. Maybe I want to go high, you want to go low, or vice versa. Whatever it is, if we're not aligned, that's going to be incredibly difficult for us to have the type of outcomes that ultimately successful businesses or successful partnerships or marriages have. So was that three? I think I gave you three or four.
Yeah, as you are talking, I'm thinking this is something that across the board, very important. Across the board, any type of relationship, whether we're talking about work relationship, whether we're talking about business, because even more so in work relationship where somebody is going into something that is not who they are and they are not producing, and the employer is so mad and talking about like, why can't you do it? They are giving you all they have. They cannot give you what they don't have. But
yeah,
think about how huge this will be if both the employer and employee understand, I'm here, but I cannot do this. And the employer understands, I should not have hired this person because I'm trying to make that person uncomfortable. They can't do this job.
Listen, there is a such thing as polarity with respect to your Eastern Zodiac. So I'm going to touch on that just briefly. So first I'll do Western, and that's where we're all familiar with that. You have the Aries and the polarity is Libra. You have the Pisces and the polarity is Virgo. Then you have Aquarius and the polarity is Leo. Capricorn, polarity is Cancer. It's Cancer. Yeah. Cancer. And then you have, I'm going backwards. Then you have Sagittarius. The polarity is Gemini. Then you have Scorpio, and the polarity is Taurus. I think that's all of them. That's 12. So now here you have these different relating dynamics where the person that you're dealing with is the polarity. And this is that opposites attract. This is where, many of us give birth to children who are our polarity, and we start intimate relationships and even partner relationships with this polarity. That one, however, is easier to overcome than the Eastern polarity.
Oh, wow.
So they call this, the Eastern one, they call this the Chinese Zodiac. Okay. And just briefly, I'm just going to touch on what this looks like. So this is why for every Western Zodiac or astrological sign, you have 12 different manifestations of that sign. Okay. So I'm an Aries, but I'm not the only, it's not just one type of Aries. There's the Aries that was born in the year of the rat, the year of the dog, the year of the pig, the year of the snake, the year of the boar, the year of the horse, right? So And there's 6 other ones. But the point that I'm making is there's 12 different kind for that. Here's the point. When you enter a relationship with someone, regardless of whatever type of relationship, business, intimate, even parent-child, even giving birth to siblings, children, right? When you enter a relationship with somebody who's 6 years older than you or 6 years younger than you, and then from that 6, every 12, okay? So here's what I mean. The person will be 6 years younger, and then the next time you have to worry about that repeating itself would be 12 years from that, which would be 18 years. And then 12 from that, which would be what? 30 years, right? Most people aren't going to deal with somebody that's that far away from their age. So let's just keep it to 6 and then 18. Here's the thing with 6. When we're looking at dating options, people will do, and even business, well, business is different because you'll get into business with a much wider age range. Mm-hmm. But intimate relationships, if I enter in a relationship with somebody who's 6 years younger than me, and then they present as my polarity, then you also add to the equation that they're 6 months different from me, and you make them a Libra. So now they're 6 years younger as a Libra. I mean, as 6 months different as a Libra, and then also 6 years different, which is my polarity on the astrology. I mean, on the Chinese astrology. So that would be, I'm born under the Aries rat, right? And my polarity as the rat would be the horse. Now you can imagine that if a rat runs into a barn where there are horses, what do horses do? They go crazy trying to get out of there, right? We've all seen the cartoons that horses can't stand rats. Well, this is a similar dynamic in the astrological alignment. So somebody that I enter a relationship with who's a horse, me being a rat, that's going to be a very challenging relationship, even more challenging than my Western. Here's the problem. Oftentimes, people give birth to their first child when they're 18 years old. So now you just produced your own polarity, which makes it that much more challenging for you to govern or parent that child, because the language that you speak oftentimes falls on deaf ears or even garbled in a sense. You remember Charlie Brown, right? It's hard for them to hear what you're saying. It's hard for what you're saying to resonate with them, because in a sense, the harmony, the balance that should be in a relationship is much more distorted because of that polarity. Wow. So this works for business relationships too, again, because if you get in a business relationship with somebody that's 6 years age difference, older or younger, 18 years older or younger, then you go into 30 years, and then from there you go into 42 years, et cetera, et cetera. You can see this play out across the board. And I've had couples that come to me as double polarity. And that's incredibly challenging to work with that. They have to give a lot of space. And just to make it even more personal, I'll put a bow on it with this conversation, with this point. My granddaughter was born when I was 42 years old. Mm-hmm. So she is my Eastern polarity. Okay. And then she's a Libra on top of that. So she's my double polarity. Now, most people would think, this child just has a funky attitude or whatever. Mm. She loves her granddaddy. I mean, she says, "Hey, granddaddy," like it's my own personal holiday, right? So there are times, granddaddy, I can't wait to see granddaddy. And then there are times when she'll see me and she won't even speak.
Wow.
Now, she doesn't know what's going on, but I know what's going on. Now, but if I didn't know what was going on, I would have a tendency to take that personal. What's wrong with you? What have I done to you? Why are you acting that way toward me? Why don't you even want to speak to me today? Or there's no hug for granddaddy today. Today is not a granddaddy holiday. I could take that personal if I didn't understand the nature of what I'm dealing with. But I can see it play out in each of my grandchildren, the different relationships with the different family members, and it's really fascinating to watch when you understand. It's much more than just somebody has a bad attitude, or they just don't like me, or I can't stand them. It gets so much more intricate than that when you have a fuller understanding, and when you have that fuller understanding, you have a much greater appreciation for who you're dealing
with. This is huge.
I think
This
so.
is huge, like a course. Really, this is huge. And this will alleviate a lot of problems and challenges that we have in relationships. It doesn't really matter any type of relationship, all kinds of relationship, that if someone understands they are dealing with. I know I work with women on personality and communication style. But even this, can you imagine adding this to that? This is huge, because you talk about the Eastern and you talk about the Western, right?
Right.
This is huge. I don't even think that people. I don't think you talk much of what you really do, because the more I talk to you, the more I realize, oh my God, this will save a lot of relationships, marriages, business relationship, work relationship, anything.
Siblings.
Relationship, it's huge.
Yeah, siblings too. I mean, my daughter, she and her husband, we all sat down at the table. I mean, we wrote this up like a strategy, like as if we were planning for a football play or a basketball play. We sat there and we calculated the year and the month that we were trying to target for her to give birth to my grandchildren, her children. And then she calculated the same way when producing the sibling for that child, because she wanted to produce a child that she and her husband were harmonious with, even though it happened to be, outside of my healthiest operating range. I can deal with that because of the information that I have. So I wasn't worried about it. Go ahead and do what's best for you guys. I'll figure the rest of it out once the baby gets here. But then they brought forth my oldest grandchild, my granddaughter Layla. She's 7 now. And then they said, okay, after that one was born, a couple years later, they said, okay, we're ready for another one. So we sat down and we calculated, we strategized. Okay, this is the year and the month that we're targeting, right? And so they brought forth the sibling, which was my next grandchild, my grandson Ezra. We call him Easy. Ain't nothing easy about that boy either. But anyway, they gave birth to him, and I'm telling you, those children are like two peas in a pod. And it's just it's amazing to watch, especially when you're watching with an understanding that most people just don't have. Most people don't even know what they don't know, and so it's impossible to even operate with that level or that level of interaction when you don't understand.
And another thing is because also, some people shy away from the word when you say astrology or zodiac, but it's just the name, but the information really is crucial. I'm sorry about the information is crucial, and so we're gonna be rounding up here, and I'm gonna bring you again. I am definitely going to bring you again, because you have so much information, a lot of wisdom, a lot of nuggets that you are dropping, and I know that my viewers will enjoy watching this and get a lot of value from watching this. So I want to thank you. But before we go, viewers, please drop your comments. Don't forget to drop your comments, because I do this show because of you. This information is so important. It will save us a lot of agony. A lot of agony. What if we knew exactly who we're dealing with and how we can navigate challenges and have a good relationship, whether it's work, whether it's business or intimate relationship? So don't forget to drop your comments. We'll come back to you and respond to your comments. I want to thank everyone for joining us. Again, we do this show every Monday at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And Vaun, before we go, I want to talk to you and say, take the stage, give us your final word.
Yeah, listen, I say all the time, there's no such thing as a relationship that can't work, but there is such thing as a whole lot of people who won't work the relationship.
Mm.
Okay. And so a large part of working the relationship is showing up to the relationship with the tools that you need in order to get the most out of it. And in that regard, I say, again, every relationship can succeed. Every relationship can experience a very high degree of harmony, but we got to put the work in, right? All you can do is all you can do, and that's enough. But you got to make sure that you do all you can do. You can reach me at info@theconditionsoflove.com. So email me at info@theconditionsoflove.com. My website is www.theconditionsoflove.com. Of course, you can reach me here on Facebook and Instagram, Vaun the Love Alchemist. I title my website and my book "The Conditions of Love" because unfortunately there are so many people out here looking for unconditional love. I personally don't think that exists, except for maybe between you and God, or you and whatever you may call your creator, right? And the next best thing, or the next closest thing that you might find to that is, between a parent and a child, right? If you're looking for unconditional love, though, I say get a puppy. I sell Doberman Pinschers, and you can also get a German Shepherd. They're pretty good too. They're pretty loyal. That's about as close as you're going to get to unconditional love. But outside of that, this is why my work is aimed at helping people deal with the conditions of love and what love is actually requiring. And love is not just about feelings. It's about what you're willing to do sometimes despite how we feel, right? Compromises, the sacrifices, etc. So that's all I have. I want to thank you again, Christy. I really appreciate being able to spend time and have these conversations with you. We always have some real good conversations. So I'm looking forward to coming back.
Viewers, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for those of you that have been buying my new book, The Almanac of Rising Stars. Thank you for all your support. I'm going to still put the link for you to get a copy if you have not gotten a copy. And also to get in contact with me, to work with me, you can reach me. I think I'm going to drop the link. I will drop the link as well. If you want to work with me, to reach me. I help women create a high converting presentation that's helped them get more of their ideal clients using storytelling. And I cannot wait to be talking to some of you. So again, thank you so much for joining us. I am going to bring you back, definitely. Thank you again, and bye for now.
Thank you. Goodbye.